Your Next Big Move podcast for anyone involved in the buying and selling of businesses that wants to know how to do it right. Hosted by Zoran and brought to you by Exclusive Business Sales. Sell your business with certainty.
Hello everyone. Today my guest is amazing Jackson Millan, also known as the Wealth Mentor. He's an award-winning businessman and best-selling author. We talked about how to generate wealth through business and through planned growth and investments both inside and outside the business. Jackson has helped many business owners achieve real financial freedom using their business as a base for it. This episode is must listen for anyone who owns a business and wants to reach financial independence. So let's get into it. So hello, Jackson.
Zoran,
How are you, mate?
doing well, mate. I'm back.
Hey, when I found out what you do for a living, I was like, I have to talk to this guy, all right?
You didn't run the other way?
No, I didn't
No?
run the other way. He actually impressed me because I see need for what you do a lot in what we're doing, dealing with business people and selling businesses. So I'll let you explain exactly what you do.
Yes. So our business is Aureus Financial. We've started the business about 6 years ago now. I've been in the wealth and business strategy space for about 15 years. I started my career when I was 19. My parents were business people. My mum was a hairdresser. Dad was a tradie. And it was always hand to mouth. They had no value in their business. It was very much creating a job for themselves. And we never had any in excess money.
Okay.
And the thing was, they were very good at what they did, but they were not very good at the money side. And I started trying to work out how I could create a catalyst for change. So I started learning to become a financial advisor. I didn't really like the industry. I felt that it didn't serve people like my parents to help them get started and learn the fundamentals. They just wanted to help people who are already wealthy make more money or sell commission-based products to people like my parents who quite frankly didn't need them and it wasn't going to make a difference. So I've been working as a wealth coach and strategist for over the last decade and primarily focusing on helping business owners create financial freedom faster.
But you also work with businesses, helping them improve the business.
Correct.
You want to say a few words about that?
This is very important. I feel that for business owners, the idea of being in business and building wealth, they treat them as being mutually exclusive. And my philosophy is that your business is the best asset class that you can utilize in order to supercharge your trajectory to creating financial freedom. And ignoring it in the wealth building process is remiss and, to be honest, quite silly. If we actually factor it into your overall wealth building philosophy and your investment strategy, not only does it allow you to build a more valuable business, but it allows you to speed up your path to creating financial freedom a whole lot faster. So we have a unique methodology that we call the Wealth Mastery Machine that's all about maximizing business profit, increasing the value of that business, acquiring other businesses, and building passive wealth through property and shares.
So it's kind of all in one.
It's it.
All in one.
We're trying our best.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you, because what we see often that most of the assets that people have, business people have, or most of the wealth of theirs is locked into one asset,
Correct.
which is a business.
Yes.
So when it comes to exit strategy or exiting a business, it becomes a bit of a problem and it's a very stressful,
Yes.
because if you don't execute this properly, there's nothing to show for 5 years, 10 years, 50 years of your life. All right.
Yeah.
So you explain how you saw the need. You grown up in that environment and you saw that, people focus on business and work, but they don't focus on the other part.
Correct.
Why is that, you think?
I've done a lot of work around behavioral finance because from a philosophy standpoint, there are 3 factors to success when it comes to money, whether that be money in your business, whether it be money in your household. The first part is the strategies. You need to have a certain amount of knowledge and expertise to know what's possible. You don't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah.
As they famously said, it's the punch you don't see coming that knocks you out, right? The next part's the action. You might have all of the knowledge in the world, but a good idea in theory remains exactly that, just a good idea until you put it into practice. Or my business partner, Sam, says you only get paid on what you finish, not what you start, right? But the thing that people don't often talk about is the operating system, your internal way that you are wired, the way that you have experienced life, the way that you've gone through the world that has led you to look at certain strategies and certain actions with your lens, right? And most people think that strategies and tactics or execution are going to get them to their goals. In actual fact, they don't lift the invisible ceilings that are actually holding them back.
What are the invisible ceilings?
A lot of this is about mindset, right? This comes back to that same point that you mentioned. If a business owner is relying on selling their business in order to be able to create financial freedom, they are forced to pursue that situation from a position of scarcity because they don't have control, right?
Mm-hmm.
As opposed to being in a position of abundance where you actually don't need to sell your business. That is the most valuable business, right?
Yeah, the one you don't want to sell, you want to hold on to, yes.
Exactly. And particularly when we're in a capitalist society and we're talking about the balance of supply versus demand, when you have something that is hugely desirable, but it is in scarce supply, it's more valuable.
Yep.
And this is the issue, right? The typical mindset of a business owner is they typically start Street Fighter mode. Most people aren't served with a silver spoon in their mouth, right? They work bloody hard and they sacrifice and compromise. They work long hours, huge stress, no certainty. They've forgone their corporate salary or whatever they've done previously. And they've probably, to put it bluntly, eaten shit for a period of time, right?
Yep.
They've eaten the crumbs in order to reinvest.
Okay. Anyone in business can relate to this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We've all been there. Then we get to a point where we get to a business where we've achieved a certain level of goal. I feel that 7 figures is typically where you go, okay, I've done something. I've achieved something. I'm getting a certain economy of scale. I've afforded more opportunities. And some business owners start taking lots of chips off the table to make up for lost time. Right? Some others hold on to those scarce behaviors where they live on the smell of an oil rag and reinvest all of the profits in scaling up.
Mm-hmm.
Typically speaking, in both of those kettles of fish, most people are not focusing on wealth building. They might buy their home, they might give themselves a pay rise that supplements their lifestyle, but they are not aggressively accumulating investment assets. They're still betting on their business. And all of this perpetuates this scarcity mentality that limits the amount of opportunities they have to actually create financial freedom, because that's why they got into business, right? And have more opportunities and flexibilities because, quite frankly, most people don't want freedom. They want choice.
Okay.
And there's a fundamental difference. Because like in your experience, Aaron, do most business owners want to hang up their hat and do nothing for the rest of their life, sitting on a beach in the Bahamas, drinking rum out of a coconut?
Well, that's what I think they want, but no. but they do think that. They think eventually I'm going to get there, I'm going to exit this, and then I'm going to just enjoy drinking pina coladas or whatever you're into, all right? Don't know where you're going with that, and I'll let you finish it, but I have seen that so many times that people said, listen, I want to exit the business, I want to enjoy myself, and normally, unless they are in real retirement age, 6 months later, they're back to us and said, hey, I need to find something else because this is not what it's cracked up to be.
Exactly. It's just this roller coaster ride of that they go on that most business owners, they love it.
Yeah.
There's a scratch that they've got to itch. The point I'm trying to make here is the fundamental issue that revolves around our entire value proposition and what we do for our clients is we help them get clear on what financial freedom actually means beyond their business. Because business is just a vehicle. It's a wealth creation vehicle, like property, like shares, that is there to produce a particular outcome.
I'll challenge that a little bit. I don't think it's just a financial vehicle because a lot of people find themselves in what they do.
Yes.
All right? So it's a little bit different for all the other assets, shares or properties or different investments because you do have a lot of control.
Yes.
And you're doing something that you believe in. Sure. Not in every case, but in many cases. Yeah.
A lot of cases. I agree. But the idea is still, many business owners who would potentially do it for free if they could because they love it, let's not beat around the bush here, they're doing it for financial gain, right? And the idea is that we want to make sure that we don't have to constantly have the need to produce active income. We can get to a position where we can work because we want to.
So you said something earlier. You teach people to know, to discover, don't know exact words, paraphrase him here, but it comes down to what financial freedom actually is.
Yes.
So what is financial freedom?
So it depends on the person that you're asking. And there's an exercise we take our clients through, which I'll share for the listeners and who is watching, that they can go through this themselves. The idea of financial freedom is about being able to do what you want, when you want, with whom you want, if you even want to do it at all.
Okay.
Without having the limitation of the two primary resources or commodities required, time and or money. Because everything in the world can be defined by the requirement of those two resources, right? And in business, we typically go through a stage where we're trading time for money. So we get to a point where we've produced enough money where we can buy back our time. And then the truly affluent people in the world trade money for money. Because that's how we create generational wealth. We create long-term legacy, right? So the point that we do and what we go through with our clients is we take them through an exercise called the 20-year roadmap. And this is born from one of the biggest flaws in traditional financial principles is that in order to be wealthy, you need to be scarce with your resources. In other words, I need to sacrifice today in order to have more opportunity tomorrow or in the future.
Okay.
Now, to go on a little bit of a tangent here, I was, over the last 12 months, formally diagnosed with ADHD.
No, didn't know this.
And and one of the symptoms of ADHD is the inability to defer gratification.
Mm-hmm.
And it frustrated me for years because...
Sorry, inability.
Inability.
So you want to now.
I want everything now. And I hyperfixate on things. And I was really frustrated because I was trying to practice what I was preaching of put away your money and make smart decisions and sacrifice and don't do silly things. Whereas for most of my early adult life, I was living hand to mouth, spending all the money that I made, pursuing stupid things, doing things what young men do, right? And the issue that I had is that I'm like, why can't I do these things that all of these other people do? And I had this epiphany moment. I discovered this experiment that was called the marshmallow experiment. I wrote about it in my first book. Are you familiar with it, Zoran?
Yeah, I am.
And for those who haven't heard of it, the idea was that they wanted to test whether deferring gratification is a learnt behavior or whether you're born with it. So they took 4 and 5-year-old kids, they put them in a room, gave them a marshmallow and said, hey, if I come back into this room and you haven't eaten the marshmallow, I'll give you a second one. 2 out of 3 of the kids would eat the marshmallow. 1 out of 3 would not. I was the 2 out of 3. But what that led me to think is, well, who defined those rules? Is that a scarcity of resources or is that a scarcity of planning? In other words, I only need to sacrifice and compromise if I do not have enough means to do everything I want to do. That is an absence of planning. And as a business owner, when we can manufacture our own worth and we can have control over what we do and what we build, financial freedom is about reverse engineering the outcome and working out what our vehicle, the business, needs to do in order to have our cake and eat it too. I want to live a great lifestyle and I want to build a property portfolio. I want to send my kids to private school and I want to do renovations. I want to go and travel for 8 weeks of the year and I want to create passive income. And this is the fundamental principle that we've built our model. It's a better planning leading to defining what resources we need to do it all.
So you start at the end in mind.
Correct.
Okay, so this is where you want to be, this is where you go. And how does it work? What do you work on first? Business or, well, depending
all
on the
personal.
size? Yeah.
Once again, businesses fall into this trap and business owners fall into this trap because we love our business and we live and breathe it. It becomes the be-all and end-all of everything we do. We think about it.
Yeah.
Pretty much every waking moment. There's nothing wrong with that. However, that means that a lot of our personal goals end up coming second, third, last, right? Whereas when we flip it on its head and we reverse engineer it backwards, it allows us to create these, what I call objective lenses that become pass or fail decisions around, okay, if I want to create financial freedom in the next 10 years, have my home paid off and build $10 million in wealth, is this business decision that I'm doing, this acquisition, this sale, this merger, buying my premises, whatever this decision may be, does it get me closer to this goal or does it not?
Oh, how hard or easy is that to define? Because somebody may go and think, well, yeah, it does. I invest this $500,000 into my business. It's going to improve the business. I'm going to get more money. And or should you put a part of that in the business, part in aside for investment, or is the investment the best thing? It's subjective.
It is.
But it all depends on assumptions.
Of course.
And everybody in the business, is guilty of thinking that the thing's going to work out
They
way
overinflate
better than what they do.
And I'm guilty of that too.
So how do you deal with that?
We deal with it by rebuttaling and saying, well, why can't we do both? So, for example, and let's say there was $500,000 that we're going to potentially invest back into the business to pursue some other type of project or business growth. Well, the idea is, okay, well, in what capacity could we do that with $250,000 and then use the remaining $250,000 to go and buy 3 investment properties in your own name? And the idea is about how do we create balance? And the principle of this is diversification. Let's not squirrel away every last red cent back into the business. Let's demonstrate that we're able to take chips off the table, actually maximize the profitability, which helps us create a more valuable business in the process, accumulate passive assets that are going to work like your number one employees, 24/7, 365, no sick leave, no annual leave. And sure, they're not going to produce the 20 or 30% year-on-year returns that your business might, but they're not designed to. They're there to do 8 to 10%. Plus, if we use leverage, we can get a 10 times magnification of cash on cash return for doing nothing. All we're doing is allocating capital.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea here is lazy equity.
So how far into the detail you go when you're calculating this? Do you actually do projections?
We do. 20 years.
Yeah. Okay,
Typically 20 years.
So $500,000 in a business will do this. $500,000 in the asset is going to do that. And
Correct.
so you trying to make a non-emotional decisions,
Exactly.
but fact-based decisions.
Exactly. And my whole philosophy of this, which is very contrary to how most entrepreneurs, and to be fair, how I'm intrinsically wired to think, is that as an entrepreneur, we want to take the most amount of risk to shortcut to get to the goal, right? Because we're risk takers.
Yeah.
Sure, we want asymmetrical risks because we can control the outcome more or less, but we're not fearful of the downside because we're so focused on the upside, right? On the flip side, how I try and do this is I work out what's the least amount of risk necessary to get to the goal. And then this allows us to balance it.
I challenge this as well.
Sure.
All right. So you're the business owner and you're 100% like you're wired for risk. You enjoy risk. You love risk. And isn't it, but do you? All right. Because now you're taking the money and putting something in a less risky strategy.
Mm-hmm.
But are you don't want to go that way because you may going to think that less risky strategy is not going to work as good as your high risk strategy. So are you still afraid of the risk and that it's going to fail, or you just don't think that way? What do you think it is?
It's interesting. Everyone's wired differently, but I think the idea here is what we're trying to distinguish is the difference between active income and passive income, right? Nothing is truly passive, okay? I've got clients who've got 50 properties and they will tell you they're hard work.
Yeah,
right?
you're going to manage this.
Shit always goes wrong. There's no such thing as passive wealth, right? The closest thing you can get is holding shares in a listed company that pay you dividends, right? You got no tenants, you don't pay strata rates, you don't pay insurance.
Correct.
But the bank could cut the dividend payment, right?
But even that needs a management of portfolio and
Correct. It all takes work. But the idea is that there is an asymmetrical relationship between the amount of effort invested and the return that is produced. Whereas in our business, it is an active wealth. It's active income. Sure, you can hire a team, but they could quit. You can build management teams. They could sabotage the business.
Look, you don't have to explain how active business to anybody in business.
Exactly.
Right?
They understand. So the idea here is that in the active play, we have the ability to create arbitrage of opportunity because we know we go an inch wide and a mile deep because we know it inherently. The idea here, though, is that anything outside of that zone of genius that takes the majority of our bandwidth must be passive. It has to be systematic and it has to be ideally automated where possible.
Okay, so what ratio are we talking about?
It really depends. And this goes through various stages. So what we kind of define for our business clients is we define them in 5 stages. We've got financial battle, which is typically less than 10 grand a month. The idea is it's about viability of business. You've got a job.
Yeah.
Right? Next, we get to the financial comfort. It's like at 30 to 50K a month. You've got a little bit of extra meat on the bone as such to be able to create leverage.
So we're talking profit, what you can spend on yourself or not on the business.
Yep, exactly. Then we get to like that $1 million range, kind of 80 grand a month to 100 grand a month. This is where we can start creating management and disconnecting strategy from operations. Then we get to 300, and this is where we can really start creating some significant leverage where we can start doing acquisitions and strategic growth. And then above there, It's a different kettle of fish. So as we go through these stages, like for example, somebody who's in financial battle or financial comfort, I'm not going to be talking to them about building their property portfolio. Your business is your baby, and you haven't even nailed getting
just stay alive. Just stay alive.
Get it alive, get it sustainable, maximize the profit.
Increase it and then start thinking.
Exactly. But then as we start getting to that tail end, and sure, there's much bigger businesses than $5 or $10 million a year in revenue, but we're still talking small business land. It's at that point where we can start taking a lot more chips off the table, and we essentially have more options available because also the founder and the owner has more bandwidth available. This is the stage that we're in our own business. At this stage, because we've got layers of management, we've got people in delivery, we've got a team of 30, we've got 1,000 clients. We're focusing on acquisitions. We're focusing on acquiring real estate. We're focusing on acquiring shares. We're building wealth. And it's because we're at that kind of circa $10 million range that we are afforded those opportunities ourselves. And it makes sense.
Okay, so in your clients, well, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but what I see out there, the first portion that you describe, which is small business.
Yes.
It's the largest portion of Australian businesses. Then you're getting to these profitable businesses that do create a profit over and above your wage.
Yes.
But it gets smaller. And then once we start talking $1.5 million, $2 million EBIT, it's even smaller. And there's different calculations I see, but I think it's 1 in 100.
Yeah.
All right. So is your portfolio of clients similar spread, or does this apply more to people that run more mature businesses?
Yeah, they're definitely more mature businesses. I'd say that our median clients high 6 figures, so approaching that 7 figures mark. So they're definitely exceptions to the rule in terms of small business. They're in that kind of top 5 to 1%.
So where we talking? You'd be talking income when you say 7 figures?
In terms of revenue, correct.
Total revenue of the business.
Total revenue of the business around about that $1 million range.
Yeah, okay.
And then I'd probably say up to about 5 million. Most of these businesses that we're working with are sub 10.
Okay. So they're small businesses,
Correct.
to small, medium businesses, all right? So when should somebody start thinking, hey, I'm ready to actually consider some sort of investment rather than just working on my business?
Right now, right? To be honest, as Confucius said, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago and the second best time is today. The reason why this is important, Zoran, and the reason why this aligns so well is because by maximising profit and maximising EBIT, that is the primary mechanism in which a business is valued. And as a byproduct of maximising that EBIT, we have more profitability, we have more surplus cash flow that as business owners, we have the freedom to choose what we do with.
Mm-hmm.
And sure, you can tip that back into the business, but it is my opinion of looking at thousands of businesses' financials. The vast majority of times where I speak to a business owner and they've given me the excuse that they're reinvesting back into growth, it is a shitty excuse for poor money management. Their business, in other words, didn't necessarily need that capital reinvestment. They could have just run a leaner business and made smarter and more shrewd decisions, taken the profit out of the business, and in many cases achieved the same, if not a better financial outcome.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to put you on the spot, but give me an example of that.
I'll give you an example. We were working with a creative agency that was working in the FMCG space, okay? Multi-7-figure business, working with big ticket corporate clients, $100,000 above projects. And the business had continually been perpetuating the growth. And they had good growth, nearly 200% growth in a year, which is a lot of growth to sustain.
Yeah,
you
big.
break a lot of systems when you grow a business that quickly. The business was on the verge of going bust, right? From the outside looking in, they had the high-ticket client, they had the good revenue, the big team, the beautiful office. But one of the things that they'd failed to recognize is their cash conversion cycle. For the more clients that they brought on, the faster they were burning their working capital. And when we actually looked into it, the key issues were the sustainability of the financial model and understanding their balance sheet, which they just didn't understand. Their accountants had never taken the time to explain it to them, and they just thought good growth was good growth. Didn't matter in what way it came. So there was a huge restructuring exercise that we needed to go through in terms of firstly redefining the value proposition and their financial model, understanding that cash conversion cycle for when they sign a client, the cost to serve, and when they actually banked all of the cash, and actually trying to build the business into a valuable business. As a result of going through this, and it was quite a difficult time for this business, we were able to turn it so it was self-sufficient. It didn't actually require any more capital investment. The founder was able to take out substantial profits.
So how did you do that? Did you pull the business back a little bit, or?
Well, we had to deliver on the clients that already had in contract,
Okay.
but we changed the way in which cash was collected. So they were basically collecting a relatively small deposit up front, and they were getting the bulk of the payment at the end of the project. But what they didn't really acknowledge was that they had all of these fixed expenses of delivering on that project over this period of time and 90-day payment terms from their clients. That's a hard business to scale.
Very hard.
It's a cash-eating monster. So by implementing our cash flow methodology, helping them understand cash conversion cycles, and really bringing light to the fact of the unsustainability of their model, we're able to turn it around.
So these are not hard changes.
No, simple
it's hard to
changes.
recognize them sometimes.
Correct.
Once we recognize them, few systems, few conversations with the clients, and you can turn this around. And not only that it's going to provide the profitability going forward, but immediately it's going to bring the cash to the table.
Correct.
Yeah. And so how did you stop them from going, okay, now let's grow even faster?
Well, what we acknowledged is that their excuse for reinvesting back into growth was actually an excuse for not acknowledging the fact that certain clients at the tail end of their pipeline were subsidizing clients at the front end of the pipeline. It was only the aggressive growth that had brought it to light that all of the clients were losing money because they were just growing too fast.
Yeah.
And what we helped them acknowledge is through the implementation of what we call operating rules, that we were able to create non-negotiable frames of if these parameters are not met in your business, you do not grow. There's certain things, certain decisions that you cannot afford to make because you're not doing it from a position of strength. So for example, if your operating profit is not over 20%, if you don't have 3 times cash to expenses in the bank, if you do not have a certain ratio of recurring clients to new clients, you're not playing from a position of strength. You're gambling. And particularly in a goodwill business like that, market changes. We've seen through COVID, businesses get impacted, and very quickly a black swan event removes the sustainability.
Both ways, up and down, yeah.
They're gone. Whereas in a business like what we have, we've got a lot of recurring revenue, so we have certainty in that. We can make certain decisions whereby...
So these operating rules, you make them based on, well, each business is going to have a different rules.
Correct. Very different. And that's really a mechanism of, firstly, what does that founder want in terms of financial freedom out of their business?
So you're going to implement it in operating rules.
Yes.
So if you want to do this much money has to go towards investments before you start reinvesting in growth.
Exactly.
So I would imagine you would adjust that can give you both, can give you sustained growth.
Yes.
And money to invest just in case the sustained growth doesn't happen.
Correct. And also the great part about this, Oren, because it is deflating for most business owners. 'Cause they're like, oh, you're raining on my parade. I want this growth. It's exciting.
Yeah.
I can talk to my friends about it at the bar. 200% growth. Sexy.
Oh, fantastic.
However, we keep the doors open with these operating rules. And also, when the tides do turn, as Warren Buffett says, when the tide goes out, you see who's swimming naked.
Yeah.
These businesses, because they've got strong balance sheets, they're now in a position to acquire other aligned businesses, potentially their competitors, at cents on the dollar. And we've done this strategy ourselves in our own business, and taught many of our clients to do the same. And it's allowed them to then actually get far more growth, but sustainable growth.
Look, there's something about this fast growth that's kind of trap, and you can prove that to yourself. When you look at there's few of those awards that say fastest growing business in the country, and just go back and look at one of those. There was a fastest growing business 5 years ago.
Where are they now?
Where are they now? And it never ceased to amaze me. All right, so there has to be growth. But it has to be, like you said, from position of strength.
Correct.
It's not just go out there for, look, it could work. It's good fun.
Sure.
All right? But it could also backfire a big way.
And this is the challenge, Zoran. Once again, with someone with ADHD, a lot of the decisions I make is chasing the dopamine. And that's why a lot of entrepreneurs, I think, whether they've been diagnosed or not, have some traits of ADD, ADHD, right? They chase the dopamine. They chase the excitement. They chase the vanity metrics, the metrics that don't necessarily make a meaningful difference apart from patting their ego.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm sure you encounter this in the land of selling businesses, right? That emotional value that they place on their business that are far above and beyond the fundamentals, right?
Huge. There is a big problem for us because they price, when somebody's selling a business, they price, blood, sweat and tears that they put in it.
Yeah.
And, 20 years of my life, that's not what it's all about. From the person that's coming in, it's a financial transaction.
Correct.
Right? And it's very, and often comes because people didn't do what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because there is no investments outside the business. And 20 years of my life went into this. And I have to, I don't care what the fundamentals are. I don't care what the market's paying for something that I've got. I just need more.
Yes.
Because look what I've done.
My life depends on it,
Yeah,
right?
my life depends on it. And, I've got a friend of somebody selling a business, but their friend was working for the bank and he's just doing some small investments. Correct. And all of a sudden, he's done better than for fraction of the hard work that you put in.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be like that.
No.
And you were right at the beginning. It's all about planning because we just go into the business, thinking about the business, and as a business, and we forget, kind of contradicts itself, but as an organization, but we forget to think about the profits and the real profits. Sometimes you got the profits, but you can't even take them out. Like in the case of the example that you actually said.
Exactly.
Your growth is useless if all your profits are back
in accounts receivable.
In accounts receivable. Never going to get them.
Sense.
And even if you get them, then you got to pay taxes and everything else. So you got to have a good tax strategy.
Correct.
How are you going to take it? Because a lot of people discover this when you're not making. A lot of people that come to us and say, "Oh, well, look, we minimize our taxes." No, you don't. You just don't make profit.
Exactly.
All right. You realize the problem with taxes once when you start making serious profit. That's when you go, "Is that what I'm paying?" And that's when they start thinking about investments and how to actually use that to their best advantage. But you didn't answer my question. And well, you did. You said start now. But when is a really good time to start thinking about it? And the way I understand why you said now, well, if you got a business that's just giving you wage,
sure.
Well, you got to start planning now.
Correct.
You may not going to start investing right away, but you got to start changing your way you're thinking about the things.
And look, let's think about the listeners or watchers for this show, right?
Yeah.
You're in a stage where either you are looking to exit your business in the not too distant future, or you were looking to acquire other businesses and you're looking to get an edge by understanding what sellers are potentially looking for, right? And that's a perfect time to be considering wealth building, because what we've got to realize is that if business is an asset class, which it is, we need to acknowledge that what role is that asset class supposed to play in your plan to creating financial freedom. You do nobody favors by putting an emotional value on your business. You need to be objective, even if it hurts your ego, right? So if your business is only worth $100,000 or whatever, that's fine. You may not be happy with it, but if it is what it is, you need to say, okay, what can I do to maximize that value within the time frame that I've got? And if that's only going to get me part of the way to financial freedom, what else do I need to do? Because there are businesses that aren't going to demand a 5 times EBITDA valuation, right? There's some goodwill businesses that they're lucky to get 1 times, right? Small accounting firms, right? On their book value, they're getting 0.8 to 1.2 times fees?
Depends who you talk to.
Depends
if you're
who
talking to the accountant that's selling, it's at least 5.
Of course. Yeah. They're big egos. But the point here being is that there's nothing wrong with that. If you've got a good business that produces great cash flow, what you need to acknowledge is that your business's value is only going to contribute so much to your wealth building, and therefore it's what you do with the profits that make the difference. The issue that we see, Zoran, is there's certain businesses who believe their business is valuable because of that sweat equity, right? And for that reason, they keep reinvesting and they're flogging a dead horse.
Yeah.
Whereas they should just acknowledge, okay, my business is only worth this. I now have no choice but to commit these profits to building assets and building wealth in property and shares to allow me to create financial freedom for me and my family, because that's the only way I could get compensated.
So when somebody comes and sees you and sit down with them and say, okay, this is my business.
Yes.
Do you sit down with them, look at it, say, what do you want to do? And do you actually give them a clear path for getting there? Or
we do.
Yes.
And we actually, from the base plan that we create, we ignore the business value. We assume it doesn't exist. The reason for it is because, as you know, the business landscape changes.
Yep.
It may not be the best time for you to sell your business. The liquidity and the terms in which you do so may not be conducive to getting to the outcome that you want. So it's my view that in many cases, if you're looking to create a plan to create financial freedom, you should not have to rely on the sale of your business. Ideal situation is it's cream on top.
Yeah, bonus. Beautiful.
So that means that all we're dealing with is the profits and the current assets that you've got and how we optimize those.
Mm-hmm.
Then we'll say, okay, great. As our alternative strategy, because we don't want to ignore the business, what is a really conservative consideration of what you believe you can get in terms of evaluation, and what is a conservative growth assumption based on your historical growth rate? And therefore, how do we forecast that out over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, depending on the client's wealth plan? And what that allows them to do is to basically create a multiple scenario forecast of what's a realistic and fair expectation of their trajectory. And then what we start talking about is what levers we can pull to optimize that trajectory. Because for most people, they're not going to get where they
It makes perfect sense. Look, I'm guilty of it. Never done it. Never went through the exercise. It would help if you actually know where your plan is on in your life. Well, look, you don't want to plan your life 20 years in advance, but let's talk investments only.
Sure.
But your life is part of the investments.
Yes.
So okay, where's my business? If I keep on growing? Some people don't want to grow a business. Some people are happy with the business
fine.
running. But if I want to do certain things and reach their financial freedom, whatever that means for whoever that is thinking about it, 5-year, 10-year, 20-year plan. And because most of the investments, in my opinion, are long-term investments.
Correct.
You don't make money overnight, all right? And then you may gonna adjust your expectations.
Yes.
but you may gonna adjust your expectations up as well, because hey, if I actually do this could be really, really beneficial for me going forward.
Correct.
And most of the people in business actually don't think that way and don't have anything strategized forward for long term.
And here's a great thing. Unlike a lot of, and not to throw shade at traditional financial advisors, but a lot of them allow their clients to abdicate responsibility, where they say, Zoran, hand over the money, I'll handle it for you, I'll send you a pretty report, I'll crunch the numbers, I'll tell you how you are going. And entrepreneurs don't think like that. We're curious by nature. We want to understand the mechanics. We want to know what's going on behind the scenes. But the industry's been built on wholesale software solutions that advisors can't provide to their clients. Mm-hmm. We acknowledge it very early on. And so we've built a lot of tools for our clients so they can actually pull the levers themselves. Hey, what happens if I increase my profits and commit that to my portfolio? What happens if I sell my business for this amount in 10 years' time? I get the small business CGT concession. What impact is that going to have? And we basically have tools that we do that. So as a value add for anybody who's listening, we'll give you what we call our financial freedom forecast tool. And what it will allow you to do is to put in your current situation, make some economic assumptions, put in any manual shocks, inflows, outflows, and actually be able to accurately do a 3-way wealth forecast, and then be able to optimize that scenario to actually work out what you've got to do to achieve your goals. Mm-hmm. And it's eye-opening. When we do this with clients and the penny finally drops, and it creates this emphasis, because wealth is a long-term thing, and most people are short-term thinkers, right? I want to work out what I'm going to do in the next week or the next month, right?
I'm hungry. I want to figure out what I'm going to eat.
Wealth's a next year thing or 10 years' time, right? But the issue with that is the power of compounding works inversely when you don't take action.
Correct.
And when we think about the wealth levers, if compounding works well over a significant amount of time, like for compounding to really work its magic, it takes 15 years, right? And if it's any shorter than 15 years in your timeline, that means that your capital contributions of how much you can put in and also the risk that you're prepared to stomach will be the two most significant contributions to the outcome.
Mm-hmm. And why 15 years?
We found that through lots of modeling that we've done, it's at that 15-year point in terms of wealth building whereby the momentum created by the portfolio itself far exceeds how much you contribute. Mm-hmm. So it's this snowball effect of compounding. Now, there was an exercise that we did where we were looking at a property and we looked at growth over a 15-year period of time. And the first 5 years was only about 15% of the growth. The next 5 years was about 30% of the growth. And the balance was made up in the last 5 years. So it just goes to show the compounding effect and how that magnifies over time.
th- that's why flipping houses doesn't work. But
No, I agree.
Oh, no, there's going to be a lot of comments about it.
People are going to be going crazy.
Similar thing. I came about quite a few people, and they wanted to do this flipping of the businesses, and actually it doesn't make sense because exactly what you described. And another thing, once when you get in the business, that business, it's not going to run as good as before. Sometimes will, but sometimes you may going to have a drop. By the time you figure out what's going wrong and you turn it around, well, you already lost 3 years. May as well keep on running the same business.
Yes.
All right. So this, I'm going to make money to sell. Think about it. Look, and if anybody is listening to this who actually done this successfully more than once, all right, I'd love to talk to you.
Yes. Yeah. I think people get lucky. And I think this is another big issue. Entrepreneurs, they build an ego, particularly when they've had a successful business, and they think that skill set is transferable into property, into shares, or into cryptocurrency. Oh, gosh, have I seen some entrepreneurs do some damage to their wealth through thinking that those skills are universal?
Because it's, hey, you're talking about 15 years. This is 6 months, my friend. All right, I'm in and out, and it's a gamble. It's pure gamble.
When we minimize the amount of time, the volume of time, it exacerbates the element of risk, and it's just so hard to control that.
Yeah.
In an environment. So
you mentioned acquisitions a few times, but then you referred to acquisitions of shares and properties. What about acquisitions in businesses? Do you encourage people to buy businesses, or you don't?
We love business acquisitions.
Yeah, okay.
We've done about 12. We actually just exchanged on another yesterday.
So that's your own business?
Our own business, correct. And we will probably get another 3 acquisitions, relatively small acquisitions over the line by the end of the month.
Mm-hmm.
It has to be the right person. And my philosophy on this, because we're doing this at a relatively small scale, we're just under 8 figures, right? So we're still small fry. But we try and use private equity principles when it comes to doing acquisitions. We have a platform company, which is our 3 core businesses, our education and our coaching business, where we teach people these skills, our wealth advisory business, where we provide strategic financial advice, and mortgage and lending, where we help business owners get finance for their business, acquire property using the bank's money. These are our cash cows.
Yep.
The idea is those are our platforms, and there are small businesses out there that are typically one-man, one-woman bands where people get lonely, they can't hack it, the environment changes, they don't know sales and marketing, they're great technicians, they've typically built a business organically with a very loyal customer base, but they've had enough, and they want to go back and get a job or potentially come work for us.
Mm-hmm.
And we buy their businesses, and they're relatively small. One of our principles of acquisitions is we only buy businesses that have recurring revenue.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just not in the game of goodwill businesses.
So let me just unpack that a little bit. So when you were doing your wealth strategy with your partners, or have you actually implement, part of our wealth creation is going to be, or did you incorporate acquisitions into it?
Yes, we did.
So it's fully planned.
Correct.
And like you said, you know exactly when you're going to execute the acquisition.
Yes.
And can you execute this
Correct.
acquisition?
And that's based on our own operating rules. So we have 3 operating rules that are the basis of everything we do. 30% operating profit, 3 times cash to expenses, and 100% recurring revenue to expenses.
3 times cash to expenses. Expenses over what period of time?
Average over the last 3 months.
Okay.
Yep. So it's constantly changing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is if we're below those, we are in an optimization phase. It basically means that we are not in a position of strength. We can't afford to acquire. We need to focus on bolstering the value proposition, increasing efficiency, maximizing profit, building
the cash in first. Yeah.
Exactly.
Fix the problem and then. Yeah.
Yep. Then if we're beyond that, we're in growth phase, and we focus on acquisitions, whether that be businesses. We also buy real estate within our group. We trade the share market within our group. We practice exactly what we preach. But in addition to this, we also have a policy that depending on our cash to expenses, that also dictates our distributions as owners in the business. So for example, if cash to expenses is less than 3 times, there's no distributions. It's just accumulating cash on the balance sheet. If it is above 3 times, less than 6 times, we distribute 50% of profit to shareholders. And if we have cash above 6 times cash to expenses, we distribute 100%, because it's our view having more than 6 times cash in the business is probably not a smart move.
Yeah,
it's about allocating it to
sitting there doing nothing.
Exactly. And basically that's the basis of our strategy. That allows us to build wealth personally, allows us to build the value in the group, and allows us to essentially acquire other businesses.
Okay. And so you got like 3-prong approach to your business.
Yes.
Have you started those parts of the business, or have you acquired the parts of business, real estate and
We started them all from scratch.
mortgage?
And then we acquired.
Mhm.
And our acquisition strategy is either kind of a tuck-in, where we basically buy the clients or buy the asset, roll it in. We don't bring any of the resources with the business. But we've also had some really successful mergers and roll-ups where we've had people who have been phenomenal at what they did, typically really great operators, but didn't have a lot of passion for the sales and marketing or the business growth. They just wanted to do what they do really, really well, and essentially allowed them to merge into our business, provide them with a stake in our business, and then essentially we grow it together. The whole idea being that the sum of the parts is able to achieve more than the individual on their own.
Okay. So when you working with your clients,
Yes.
how much of acquisition strategy, and the reason why I'm talking about it is because that's what I love for living. See, how much attention do you actually give to that, or is that, well, if it happens, look at the acquisition, or do you sometimes say, well, look, or how often do you say, look, acquisition has to be part of your business growth?
Acquisition is always a tool in the kit bag, and we agree on this that acquisitions can be some of the best ways to accelerate your growth off the sweat of somebody else's brow, right? And as we spoke about before, there's only true tradable commodities in this world. There's time and there's money. There comes a point in your journey where you value your time far more than money. And when you have the financial resources in order to expedite your growth, then you're going to do that to get your time back, right? So acquisitions allow you to do that. Are all of our clients in a position to acquire? No, because they need to get those operating rules and get to a position where they can do so. But we do have that conversation whereby if they do not have a growth strategy in their business that they can do organically, or have a self-liquidating acquisition channel, because acquisitions can be very expensive in comparison to other acquisition channels. For example, if I can go and spend 20% of revenue on marketing to acquire a client, it's cheaper than me going and paying 3 or 5 times EBITDA for a business, right? There's certain scenarios whereby an acquisition may not be the best financial model, and some others where it is. For example, some of our clients at the moment who have a really great value proposition in e-commerce, eating up small e-commerce brands and using their platform company in order to create more economies of scale, streamline their supply chain, get bigger order quantities.
Look, I really love what you said so far, because I live out of business, selling, buying, valuing, and it's a good strategy. It's not always the best.
No.
So you really got to say, well, what else I can do with the resources that I have?
Yes.
And I have seen strategies, acquisition strategies, just for sake of acquisition strategy, and people go in there because they're just, ego driven.
Exactly.
Right? So you shouldn't focus on that. You should not just say, can I execute this, but with the funds and resources that I got,
Yes.
what else can I do? All right. Am I not going to be a business? Am I going to be outside business? Because hold this business vehicle and everything else, it's about creating profits and creating a wealth and creating a money on the end of the day.
I think the most often overlooked thing here, Zoran, is the bandwidth. I think many business owners overestimate their capacity to juggle all of the balls at once. Right. And like in our business, when we acquire, we are very specific on the types of businesses that we acquire. So our whole value proposition was we want a horizontally aligned business that adds value to a common client, and we make money with that client.
So what would you do if the vertical integration becomes an option and it's kind of lucrative? Would you consider it, or would you look at your operating principles and say, no, we're not going that way?
It would be, in my opinion, because I've been involved in vertical integrated businesses before, and it's an ethical question. I personally think that it is a significant conflict of interest whereby you're trying to serve your own best interests for the big brother or let's say the product issuer or the distribution channel above, and also the interests of the client, and it leads to inherent conflicts of interest. So for me, I wouldn't do it. I feel that the horizontally aligned, meaning...
So there's a lot to be said about focus, and I was just testing you, that's all.
Testing my ethics, I love it.
Well, not testing, but testing not your ethics, but your principle in business. I mean, like, I personally would consider everything.
Sure.
And often we make a no decision, and you make more no decision than yes. But like, if you're committed to the strategy, and I think that's a problem with a lot of business owners. The reason why I said entrepreneurs, because I can't pronounce it well, but a lot of business owners is that they hate this thing about planning 10, 15 years in advance. I want to see what happens and I'll just react to what happens. And it becomes a gamble. It's not a play and grow. And we see that a lot when people come to us selling businesses and sometimes we sell businesses on the market because the decisions were made that damage them, but with a little bit of, just a little, not much, one day of planning, it could have been totally avoided.
Correct.
But it just looks like gut feeling. Let's go.
It's interesting. There's a quote by Winston Churchill. He says, "An idiot with a plan is better off than a genius without one."
Yeah, there you go.
And I think it goes to be true. And I've unpacked this in terms of my studies around this behavioral finance, trying to understand my own inner psyche. Is the self-limiting belief around this, Zoran, is that planning 20 years in the future, or however long it might be, is a waste of time because what I want will inevitably change, which is true, right? We can't possibly foresee what we could want, and things change, right? But does that mean that we shouldn't plan at all? Or should that mean that we have a plan set out and we also have a mechanism to review it along the way? And there was a principle that it's probably one of the most valuable principles that I've discovered that has added so much value to me in my business. And it's the principle of a reflection loop. Entrepreneurs have a perspective of the future of what they want to achieve, but they struggle to marinate in the pain of their reality because they don't want to be reminded of their shortcomings, right? So they constantly go from perspective to perspective. What they lack is taking the moment to pause and reflect to say, this is what I thought was going to happen. I thought I was going to get to $1 million this year, or I thought I was going to do 30% profit. What actually happened, and what is the overlap between my perspective and my reality? And if there's not the overlap that I was expecting, why? And through this, we calibrate.
And you want somebody in business to do that?
We force them to do it, Zoran. We grab them and we shake them and we force them.
Well, when you look at it, like all the social media and everything talks against it. Just look forward, don't look backwards. Man,
bullshit.
It is. You got to reassess it. Like, if I'm going into some directions, like, let's go back. What could we do? Huge lessons to be learned.
Yes.
Huge lessons. Let me ask you a question.
Sure.
Because you're an entrepreneur in heart, and I can see the way you're talking, the way you get excited about it. When did you realize that you have to do that, and how hard was for you to say, hey, I got to start planning because I'm just hitting the wall a bit too hard?
It come to a head, and it was, I almost went bankrupt, Zoran. So what was interesting is that I started my corporate career. I'd been entrepreneurial when I was a kid. My first business was door-to-door sales when I was just shy of 4 years old. I remember vividly as a child that I put together a cart with all of my toys. I picked some flowers and I went knocking door to door selling them.
Fantastic.
Hours later, a squad car rocked up as I just closed a sale. My mum got out of the back in hysterics thinking that I'd been kidnapped, and I had absolutely no idea why she was so upset. But I was always the last person to the party around this whole thing, and I tried to play it safe doing the corporate thing. I started my first business, which was an e-commerce business, a men's fashion business. And it was an ego thing. I'm like, I'm not a fashion designer. I've never done e-commerce. I've never designed a website. I've never done digital marketing. I've never sourced clothes from China. It was a complete pursuit of proving
that makes me perfect for this.
Exactly. It was a complete pursuit of proving everyone else wrong that I could do it. And what made it worse is that at that particular time, the business was already a cash-eating monster, and it was consuming a lot of cash flow. My old man got diagnosed with stomach cancer. And his income completely stopped. He didn't have insurance, and the burden of paying the mortgage, putting food on the table was on my shoulders. And I also went through a corporate restructure, and I had a massive cut of my income. So I was trying to keep this business afloat, keep our family afloat, and trying to keep my job all at the same time. And we got through, but I ended up multi-six figures in bad debt. And I had a choice. I said, am I going to declare bankruptcy and hit the big red reset button and wait 7 years and then start again? Or am I going to do something differently? And I decided I was going to earn my way out of it. So I decided to back myself. I started my consulting business. I wound up the e-commerce business. I donated all of my stock to charity. And because I said, I need to get rid of this bad karma. And I worked my way out of it. And it took me years, but over the course of about 3 or 4 years, I paid off all of my debt. I got back to square one and I go, cool. How am I going to design a system that firstly stops me from falling back into this same position again? Because it must be an inherent trait that's got me here. So I need to get better. And there must be other people like me because my parents went down a similar path. My generations before them went down similar paths. Other people are experiencing this. And selfishly, I built these systems for me.
So when did you connect investing outside the business and the business exactly?
The thing that I learned through that sacrifice, because it took a lot of sacrifice.
Because look, a lot of people went through what you do, and that happens in business, and it happens to best people. But they get out of they carry on with the business and still
correct.
Like they turn it around and still stay in the same shape,
Yes.
which is business is the only vehicle for wealth creation.
And here's the funny thing. One of my first mindset coaches taught me this. He said, Jackson, the situations you learn to survive, your survival ultimately depends upon. In our brain, we create these synapses, these neural pathways that we learn particular ways of doing things, right? Yep. And because you've survived a particular situation, your brain doesn't acknowledge that it's a good or a bad situation. It just knows it has survived it, which is why for so many people in life and in business, it becomes this roundabout of getting the same old shit.
Same mistake again.
Same mistake. I get into shit. I work my way out of it. I get into shit again. And I realized I needed to create a catalyst for change. And I discovered a principle called loss aversion bias. There's been lots of studies on it. And what it basically states is that as a human being, we feel the emotion of loss twice as significantly as the emotion of a gain.
Yeah, we do.
That's why people play it safe and they stick to what they know and they stay in their comfort zone. And my epiphany moment was, well, if I'm going to change that, I need to put twice as much energy into creating emotion around my gain, which means that I need to create systems that create accountability to making that gain. Meaning that the loss, the perception of loss seems insignificant in terms of pursuing the gain. And that's basically how the system is built.
Okay. But how does that work with entrepreneurs or business owners? Because they don't have actually fear of loss. So
they do when you unpack it.
Okay.
They may not have
they do, but it's not as strong.
The currency is different though.
Okay.
Most entrepreneurs don't fear losing everything because I'm just going to build it again. But they fear losing connection. They fear losing their partner. They fear losing time with their children. They fear losing experience. They fear the loss itself as a impact and a judgment on their character as a human being. And there was
So it's not financial loss, but it's a loss for something
correct.
Else, different currency.
Once again, we take things from different areas, and I discovered this principle that's called the 5 Whys. I think it was created by McKinsey Institute, and McKinsey work management consultants, very, very smart people. And what they realized that most people's problem is not actually what it is. It's superficial. And we actually need to go 5 layers below that in order to find the root cause. And until we solve that root cause, we don't fix the superficial. It's just what rises to the surface at the end of it. And through going through these questioning, through helping them create the operating rules, we help them define principles in life and in their business and around their money. They create an investment philosophy. We do the 20-year roadmap. It forces them to go lower and get to that 5th why, the root cause. And that's the source of everything. And that's the catalyst for change.
Fantastic. Look, life is not just about making money.
I know.
All right. But if you're in business and you're working towards this making money, it pays to have these investments opportunities. Correct. And it gives you a bit of a security. You're not putting all the eggs in one basket. I think we said that more than once today. Yes. And regardless if something's going to happen or not, it's good to have a goal and it's good to have a plan. And you got way more chance of actually achieving it than a lot of a lot of business strategies is I'm going to go in, I'm going to make a lot of money in the business, I'm going to sell the business, and then I'm going to start investing.
Yes.
That's why I wanted to talk to you. It was really, really, really eye-opener for me as well. You brought me a little present
I
here.
did, mate.
You want to say a few words about this
Yes. So
beautiful book of yours?
my whole philosophy, and my book is called Enjoy the Journey, and my motto is living for today and planning for tomorrow, because I think business owners, they pursue that future goal, right, of tipping everything back in for a big payday. And this came to a head for me after my dad. He did recover from his stomach cancer, but about 7 years later, he got late-stage pancreatic cancer, and he was given weeks to live. And he'd spent 40 years working his absolute guts out in order to squirrel away every last red cent in order to achieve this great retirement, retiring at 65 and enjoying the fruits of his labour. And at 66, confronted with his impending death, lying there in a hospital bed, he had so many regrets in his life. And he gave me one last piece of advice as he was recounting his life. And he said, Jackson, every single person in this world has 2 lives. And your second life starts when you realise that you only have one.
Mm.
And on his deathbed, he regretted a lot of things, and it wasn't the money that he didn't make and the opportunities that he missed. It was the things that he failed to experience as a result and a direct outcome of his sacrifice in pursuit of the one thing that was supposed to give him freedom. So the whole idea of what I do is helping our clients enjoy the journey. How do we live for today and plan for tomorrow? How do we have our cake and eat it too? How do we create that freedom and flexibility we got into business in the first place? And I'm fortunate enough to have been able to create financial freedom at 33. I've spent a year traveling around Australia in a 4-wheel drive with my girlfriend and our 2 dogs, showing business owners that they don't have to be a slave to their business. We now have our dream home, and we've set up an animal sanctuary in far north Queensland. I try and lead by example and push the pace so business owners understand what are those subconscious thresholds, how do they push past them?
Yeah, I mean, it's good. Like, I wanted to say something, but I don't want to spoil what you did.
Sure.
So I did already, so may as well. I'll tell you what I'm going to do.
Yes.
Thanks for the book. I'm going to read the book. I'm gonna make a lot of notes and everything. It was fascinating talking to you. I really want to get into a little bit more of this.
Love to.
Actually, way more. And I'll tell you why. Because business doesn't have to be do or die decision. It's a mindset that you got to change, and you can instantly enjoy the business, and can be that vehicle not just for wealth creation, but good vehicle for life. But you just can't give it 100%. You need to give it 100%, but when you're in the business, but it can't be the only thing that you do in life. And a lot of people do, all right? Look, thank you very much. Just one more thing, sure. Jackson. If people want to find you and want to have a chat with you, or they need a help to actually change how they operate in investing, and they are the business owners, where do they find you?
Yes. So one of the great resources we created, because everyone's at different stages of the journey, and we've developed and identified there are 40 things that business owners need to do to create financial freedom. The scary things are, and for doing this with thousands of businesses around the world, the average score is 18 out of 40. So the idea
I
is...
thought it was lower, but anyway.
Some people
I'm thinking about myself here, right?
But the idea is that the score doesn't matter. What matters is what are the things that we can work on. And typically out of that 40, there's a handful of things that you can turn from a no to a yes very, very quickly. So if you go to wealthhealthcheck.com.au, that's wealthhealthcheck.com.au. It takes about 5 minutes. Complete the scorecard. It'll give you a report. It'll tell you what you can do to improve it. You'll get free copies of my books, a whole heap of other tools and calculators. It'll help you improve that. And of course, if anything we've spoken about resonates, feel free to reach out. We have a conversation and see how we can.
And is there a phone number or websites rather than this?
Yeah, if you jump on wealthhealthcheck.com.au, that's fine. You can find me on social media. You can check out our website at Aureus Financial. I'm not going to try and spell it. Just search for Jackson Millan.
We're going to put some notes in the podcast.
We'll check it in the show notes.
Thank you very much for talking
to us today.
My pleasure, mate.
It's been great.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Need help selling your business, buying a business, or a business valuation? Exclusive Business Sales award-winning team are here to help. Our experience, skill, expertise, and professionalism, backed by our triple guarantee, is assurance for your success. The largest network of buyers and our national coverage will help you throughout Australia in all state capitals and regional areas. Exclusive Business Sales. Sell your business with certainty.